Okay, well, we're going to get started. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm assuming so, since I've got a few. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I'm happy to be here today. I love Spirit Week. I love sharing about what I'm working on. And one of the things I've spent a lot of time working on is coaching. And I've actually been working with Ariel Griffin since last year at Spirit. So she came to this session, and then we've been working together for the last year. We've done presentations like this together a couple times. And she just finished a week of coaching training at the Kansas Leadership Center. So she's on her way. Yeah, super great. She's on her way to becoming a credentialed coach and is already a super great coach. And so, yeah, we're going to share a little bit about coaching, about leadership coaching, and building a coach-like culture today. So we're going to get started here. Let me share my screen again. There. And let me minimize that. There we go. Okay. And can everyone see the main leadership screen? Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate the thumbs up. Okay, so I'm Andy Weefald. I'm an associate professor in the Staley School of Leadership Studies. I am super happy and grateful to be joined today by Ariel Griffin, who works with Children's International. And do you want to introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you do, Ariel?
Yeah, so my name's Ariel. I know some of y'all, it's so good to see you. Right now I'm serving as a program officer at Children International. Specifically post-pandemic, I'm working with education and emotional well-being programs in Latin America, in the 7 countries in Latin America where we serve.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So this is what we're going to do today. We're just some quick introductions. We'll just kind of go around the room. Then I'm going to explain what coaching is, do a very brief teach piece about some coaching skills. And Ariel is going to jump in when she feels appropriate. And then she's really going to talk about how she's been able to build a culture of being more coach-like and a kind of a coaching culture at her organization. We're going to do some practice too. So let me just stop real quick. And can we just go around and everyone just introduce super quick? I'll kind of call out your name and just say who you are, where you are geographically. And yeah, I don't know what else. Tracy, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I am Tracy Gettinger. I graduated in May 2013, College of Business. And I'm currently in Overland Park, Kansas. And I hung out with Ariel a lot at Goodnoe Hall. Woo!
Can we throw in there, Andy, can we throw in maybe one thing you hope to gain out of this session?
Yeah. Please do.
Hope to gain. I always love to learn more about leadership. How to lead others.
Awesome. Betsy?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm the one in Florida. So I graduated in 2000 and just saw that this was an opportunity to gain more insight as to how to develop relationships when working with others. And I specifically work with administrators in a K-12 system. I'm the senior administrator of evaluation systems in Orange County Public Schools.
Thank you. Glad you're here.
Thanks.
Stephen? Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Stephen Kuchera.
We can't hear you. You can throw it in the chat if you want. You want to do that?
Go on to someone else.
Kylie. Nice to see you, by the way.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kylie Massman, and this is Crosby. He's going to be hanging out with me today. I graduated in 2016, and I currently work in development in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I think, like many people, the people we're advising and supporting have really been impacted with the pandemic. And so I am just interested in learning more about how I can support them all.
Thank you, Kylie. Oh my gosh, congratulations. So cute. Luke?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2017 in the engineering department, now lead a team of consultants on the energy side. But the focus for today, just gain additional, sharpening the skills on coaching, and then, moreover, coaching in a remote environment instead of, those interpersonal connections and conversations having, the medium being across the table. Now they're being remote. And so, just continue refining and, gaining new ways to approach those conversations.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for being here. Abdullah?
Yes, I am Abdullah Masmali. I graduated in spring 2020. Now I'm a postdoc at K-State, and I'm happy to be here to learn more.
Yeah, thank you. I hope we can meet everyone's expectations. Cassie?
Good morning, everyone. I graduated from K-State in 2016. And currently, I'm still at K-State. I work for Housing and Dining Services, specifically in Jardine. But I think I'm really interested in just kind of hearing more about like the coaching side that can go into leadership. I think that's a really cool tool to use and something that I've heard of, but never necessarily dived into. So I'm interested in learning more about that.
Awesome. Courtney?
Hi, everyone. I jumped on a little late, but I hope I go through all the items that was asked to go through. So my name is Courtney Hoffman. I graduated from K-State in 2017, and I am back working for K-State. I'm an academic advisor for our online student population. So just like everyone else, I'm just looking for some maybe current tips and tricks with connecting with individuals in this distance format, this virtual format, and I'm really looking forward to connecting with all of you as well.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't, Mary and Andrea, I didn't know, do you want to say hello real quick? I didn't know if you wanted to be included on the introductions, but please.
Yeah, I'll say hello. I'm Andrea. I'm the program manager here at the school. So I get to work with all of the faculty and staff and students. And one of the things I do is help coordinate Spirit of Leadership. So I'm excited to be here. I'm super interested in coaching. I've talked to Andy a little bit about what he does and what he researches. And so I am here because I'm part of the Staley School, but I love to listen and learn more about these kinds of conversations. Thanks for coming, everybody.
And thank you. I am just as stated before, I'm here to connect with everyone. And also coaching is an important piece of how we support people. And I am always interested in learning, and to Stephen's point, there, just with everything, if done well, it can be an extraordinary opportunity, and also would like to learn more about how to make sure you avoid some of those pitfalls as well. So I'm really happy to see you all here, and yeah, happy to have this time to center in and focus on this particular aspect of leadership. So thank you.
Yeah, so just there were a couple introductions in the chat, so you can read those if you have the chat pulled up. So Erica and Stephen, thank you for writing a little bit about yourself, and welcome. Thank you for being here. Yeah, so we're gonna jump right in. Let me re-share my screen here. All right. And actually, before, if we don't have time at the end to say this, and give a plug for continued connection. Ariel and I are both happy to continue talking with you about coaching. You are more than welcome to connect with either one of us or both of us. And we're happy to help you explore kind of deeper into any aspect of coaching. So, okay, here we go. So I'm going to briefly describe coaching and some skills to practice, some skills to think about as you try to get better at being a good coach or being more coach-like. So when we talk about coaching here in the Staley School, and we kind of teach this in our classes, we're really focused on becoming more active listeners and better listeners very broadly. And we think about holding space and providing support and empathy and building trust. And so coaching and being more coach-like is really about holding space for someone, about being the person that gives them the time and space to think through something that they're working on. And so coaching is not mentoring, and it's also not advising. So in a mentoring relationship, we're more focused on, I have experience, I'm going to tell you about my experiences, and then you can filter through the knowledge that I give you to make choices about your own challenges and leadership situations. And in advising, comes from the higher education about showing students what's available and helping them navigate college and things like that. One of the things we don't do in coaching is give advice, which is a big no-no. And when I did my coaching training, kind of got my hand slapped metaphorically every time any little bit of advice came out. So coaching is really, it's a combination of active listening, holding space, being empathetic, and over time building trust. Some values of coaching. So this one's really important. It's also a cue I use kind of in my own head if I'm in a coaching situation, is I'm going to hold the person that I'm talking to in unconditional positive regard. And sometimes if I lose track or if I catch myself wandering, I'll notice it and refocus and adjust and think about, okay, how can I treat this person like, treat them from a position of unconditional positive regard. And really what's underneath that is this mindset and attitude that the person we're with in those moments is a whole person. They're creative and they're resourceful. They can figure out their situation as long as we give them the time and space to do so. It can be really hard to do that, especially if someone's dealing with something that we've dealt with before. Because a lot of times as soon as they start telling us their story, we're going to remember our situation, right? And we're going to want to share that immediately. If we want to be more coach-like though, we kind of have to put a pin in that and just hold the space. That's why it's hard. It's hard because it's challenging to not let that come out. We want to share our story because we think it's going to help us connect with the other person. It doesn't do that. What does is holding that space, asking good questions. We can talk about what constitutes a good question. Yeah. Another thing is just being curious. So if we can be curious about someone, again, this is a cue that I use. So if someone's talking to me, I'm trying to be coach-like, I'm going to just tell myself, hey, be curious in those moments. Yeah. Before I go on, I just want to stop and, shout out any questions. Feel free to put them in the chat. What are you processing right now? As I just sort of did a really brief overview, what questions do you have? What are you thinking about?
Hey, this is Erica down in Neodesha, Kansas. I was just thinking about how you were cueing to like always dig deep, and I can't remember, I work for K-State Research and Extension, and one of the times that we were interviewing a client, one of the sheets that K-State Extension put out was like a rule would be 80% coming from the like interviewee, or maybe the coach or the participant, and then 20% from the interviewer or the coach. And I try to remember that because I get too busy talking all the time. So less from me, more from them.
Yeah, that's a great rule of thumb. It doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule. And I don't know if you could see Ariel and I were both nodding when you mentioned that, but definitely if we're trying to be coach-like, if we're trying to be, trying to be a coach in that kind of a situation, we definitely want to be listening more than we're talking. And 80-20 is a great rule. If you catch yourself talking more than you're listening, you're probably not being very coach-like. Okay, so just got a question in the chat. So mentoring is different than coaching. Mentoring is typically in a mentoring relationship, you have someone with a lot of experience, and maybe that's had made more progress in their career, maybe achieved a level that the mentee wants to reach. So there's already like an imbalance as far as like experience and maybe power. And then the nature of the relationship is that the more experienced person is going to sort of give the knowledge and try to share the experience with the mentee. So in that case, it's almost more directional from the mentor to the mentee. They're going to share, they're going to tell them what they would do. Here's how I approach these situations. Whereas a coach would be like, hey, let's think about this situation from a different perspective. How many different perspectives can you think about this situation from? And to ask questions like that. Does that answer that question, Francisca? Yeah, cool. Anything else? Any other questions? You can throw them in the chat or shout them out too. I do want to say, like, I should have done this at the beginning, but if you think about leadership very broadly, so the way I think about leadership, I think about like two very broad kind of skill sets, but also behaviors that leaders do or engage in. And very broadly, those are task-related behaviors and relationship-related behaviors. Task behaviors are things like scheduling, planning, hiring and firing people, correcting people that aren't following the rules, rewarding people. Those kinds of transactional things are on the task side. The more transformational and relationship related behaviors are showing care and concern, providing empathy, listening to followers. And so coaching is embedded in that relationship side of leadership. And it's a big part of it. And if you want to develop your relationship skills, learning how to be a better coach is a great way to do that. And as a skill, being a good listener is going to help you build and foster positive relationships. So that's kind of my like sales job about coaching, right? Is like, it's on the relationship side. If you want to get better, if you want to build more positive and stronger relationships with people, then coaching is a great way to do that. So that's how I think of it as a leadership skill. Okay, talking way too much. Okay, I'm just going to do another couple minutes and then we're going to practice. So really what we want to remember if we're trying to be coach-like is I want to listen to really understand you. I want to be curious about your story. I want to be curious about you. And I want to observe everything. So this is what makes it harder in a Zoom or a distance relationship, right? Is it's hard to see and like really capture all the body language and and tones of inflection and things like that. But we can still do a good job. One thing to note is that body language and our interpretation of body language is culturally dependent. So if I'm trying to communicate with my body language that I'm listening to you, you know, I might do that with leaning in and making a reasonable amount of eye contact. That may be disrespectful in other cultures. So it's just important to note, like, we still have to navigate some intercultural issues if we're trying to be good listeners, but also reading body language. I hope that makes sense. Did I? Okay, cool. Also, to value silence. Sometimes if you ask a good question and the person's just being quiet, it usually means they're thinking pretty deeply about it. So you just have to kind of wait, kind of bite your tongue until they say something. Usually the next thing that comes out is going to be pretty powerful. One technique we can practice when we go to practice is mirroring back. And really what that is, really simple. It's really easy to do. I'm just going to rephrase what you said and ask you if I got it right. So, you know, if you tell me a story and I'm saying like, okay, you know, what I'm hearing is this, is that right? Even if you get it wrong, it still sends the message that you were listening, and it gives you a chance to make sure that you're on the right track. So we're going to do, yeah, there's always little
Breakout
tips like
rooms,
that.
by
Like,
the way, Andy, I have them ready to go.
okay. Is everyone ready to try some practice? I think what we might do.
Is it okay if I don't? I'm also working at the same time as I'm listening. Is that okay if I just chill here?
Yeah,
for sure, for sure.
You'll automatically go into one, Tracy, but I'll put you in a breakout room with 3, and then maybe the other 2 can jump.
Okay.
You can as you see fit. You can be an observer.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so as you're comfortable and as you're able, for sure. We're going to put you into small groups in breakout rooms, and I'm going to give you a question. I'll put it in the chat. Oh, I just had it up. Okay, here we go. Send it to everyone.
Here, we got some drops after we said breakout rooms. We might have scared some people. Let's see.
That's fine.
Okay.
Leadership is hard. Leadership is risky. And we have to be courageous when we do this. Also, practicing a skill. Look, when we first learn a skill, unless you're just naturally talented in this, I definitely am not. At least that's what I tell myself. But anytime we're going to try a new skill, we got to practice. We got to act experimentally and just give it a shot. So we're going to do some small breakout rooms. I have the question, which I just put in the chat. So in the small breakout rooms, just pick 2 people, one person to be a coach, one person to be the speaker, and then the coach asks this question: what's a characteristic in other people that you envy? And then they can share their story, and you could just be curious, just ask questions about it. And really that's it. And then we'll kind of come back and do a quick debrief. Did you say you had the breakout rooms ready to go, Ariel?
Yep, I got them ready to go. Did you want us to switch or just do one round and then come back?
Let's do one round and come back, and then we'll see. I think we should do one round and then get into the culture. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, sounds good. I'll go ahead and open those rooms. It's going to automatically kick you into the breakout rooms. If you get logged out or something like that, be sure to come back and we'll try and remember the room number that you got put in. All right, and here we go. Think. Betsy, I don't know if your computer froze maybe, but I'm going to move someone into this one. Betsy's computer might have frozen. But it's okay. The room that she was in, I just threw a 3-person room and just
That's perfect.
I'll pause the recording.
Hey, yeah, so let's do a quick debrief, and get some shout outs. How did that go? What were you thinking? What were you feeling?
I had to call a friend.
You had to what, Mary? I
had to basically call a friend. Stephen was not, because of his circumstances, is not participating on camera. But after the first question, I realized I couldn't come up with a second question that wasn't guiding or leading in some way. Or sharing an opinion. I didn't have to include my own story, but it was hard. It was very hard. I'm also one that, yes, it was hard. And thank you, Stephen.
Yes, this can be very difficult. And what happened there is so common. And this happened to me a million times and still does. And it's this thing where you get stuck and you don't know what to say next. Yeah. There's a few tricks that we can share. I'll share a couple after we've done a more debrief. Abby, do you want to share too? Let me make a note.
Yeah, so I think one of the elements that's challenging is that everything is so multifaceted. So I know I was coaching Andy for everyone else. And it just that we were on that topic of, we were talking about productivity, but then you brought up, casually mentioned social media. And so also just figuring out where is the main space that coachee is wanting to chat about, and how can we make sure that we're on that topic, because there are always so many different avenues that the coach can kind of guide the conversation, but obviously, hopefully with a longer conversation we can address all of them, but being selective in the root of what they're saying.
Yeah, thank you. Who else would like to share a thought or an observation?
I like the question. It was definitely a more deep thinking question. And what was interesting is that my partner and I were on 2 separate sides of the spectrum on the question, with being the envious thing was being how other people remain calm in certain situations, and other people are very emotional. I'm very calm, and he tends to be on the more emotional side. And I think that there's, one of the questions I asked is, do you feel that there is value in the way that you respond? And it just kind of depends on how you're looking at it.
Yeah, thank you. And from your perspective, did that question sort of get the person thinking or thinking differently about how they responded?
I don't know if it got them thinking any differently, but I would say that understanding more of where they were coming from was, I think, important and valuable, because like I said, I'm on the opposite side. So I'm like, okay, how, I'm trying to figure out how to become more reactive and less calm.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any thoughts you want to share, Ariel?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was brought up previously about what happens when maybe someone wants to take the conversation a lot of different directions or is saying a lot. And And how do you like come from a place of curiosity and inquiry, but knowing that like you can't talk about everything and not everything relates. And so just understanding that the person that you're talking to, I'll refer to as like the client, that person that you are coaching is the one who sets the intention for the conversation. But as a coach, it is our responsibility to remind them, right? So like in coaching, they call that the agreement. So if at the beginning of the conversation, the person says they want to just really like be able to understand the ways in which they want to do something, and then they start talking about something else, then just asking them, how does that connect? How are you connecting that to the ways that you wanted to do that first thing? That's a good way to like redirect the conversation, because it doesn't come from the assumption that it's a tangential. Maybe they're making the connection, but they just have to be explicit about that connection. You know, it's not our responsibility as a coach to determine what's on topic and what's not on topic. And something in the last week in training that was really important for me, because I come from a culture that really values the oral tradition, storytelling, and the things that are details to other people. To me, like, I'm like, no, it's really important. There's like, this is actually like the reason why I'm telling this story is this detail. And so if a coach were to try and redirect me because they believed that what I was saying was off topic, that would be really off-putting. And so it's always better to ask people how this connects to the overall agreement that you established at the beginning. And I don't know if Mary, you resonate with that, because I know you like stories, you know, and so just thought that'd be worth sharing.
Yeah, thank you. That's super great. And you know, I think the act of truly listening to someone and holding space for them is it's just so rare that when it does happen, it really makes, this is just my perspective, it really makes someone feel comfortable with you. And it's like, to me, can help speed up that process of trust building. You know, some other, just really quickly, I didn't mention it, but you know, keeping these sorts of conversations confidential is super important too. That's like one of the big, what do I say? It's like a part of, it's like number one in the coach's code of ethics, is keeping things confidential. Obviously in a work situation, if you're just trying to be coach-like, that you don't have to like set the agreement and say like, okay, I'm not going to tell anyone about this. But if you are, you know, having a one-on-one meeting with the door closed, for me, even in a work situation, the implication there is like that you're going to keep things confidential. And if you're ever trying to be coach-like, you should sort of have that mindset too. Yeah. Yes, lots of stories. And you know, I think from a coaching perspective, when you can really lean into those stories, that's also a skill. And part of it is, you know, are you truly listening to the story and observing everything? And one of the things that one of my mentors in coaching told me is to listen for the song beneath the words. And so sometimes someone's telling you something and you're like, okay, you just may get a feeling, like an intuition, a gut feeling that there's something else going on. And so you can kind of keep asking and keep digging and kind of lean into those stories. So we're going to switch gears now and talk about how we can use these skills of being more coach-like to start to create a coach-like culture in your organization. So I'll share my screen for Ariel. And
right, I'm dropping into the chat this question: what is the culture of coaching in your context? All those C's, right? What is the culture of coaching in your context? So go ahead and just try and respond to that question in the chat. And then when I see like 3 responses, then I'll start talking. I'm popping in, I'll wait for a few more. Yeah, that's good stuff. So as I start talking about kind of what it looks like in my context, just if I say something that resonates, feel free to drop an emoji in the chat or to do a reaction, so I know that you're with me. If you're also a verbal person, feel free to unmute and say, when you agree, because that's helpful for me whenever I'm talking, especially in this virtual space, right? So, like I said, I work for an organization called Children International. And so the culture of coaching, so with my role as a program officer, one of the primary roles that I was told when I was hired is that I'm a coach. I do not hold a supervisory role with the agencies that we work with in Latin America. And I realized very quickly that when they said I was a coach, it really is taking on more of a consulting role. So people would ask me questions about education, about how to ensure quality education, about program planning and implementation. And I was expected to kind of have those answers. And oftentimes I was happy to oblige because it taps into some of my personal values of knowledge and being able to share that knowledge. It's something that I love to do. And it's something that's really attached to the culture that I came from, because my dad, as a man who immigrated from Nigeria, he kind of instilled in me the value of, as you get older and have more experiences, you share that knowledge. And when people ask you, it is your duty to share that. Now, as you heard Andy talk about, that's not exactly coaching. And so I was told I was a coach, I was expected to consult. And so there was just really a disconnect for me. So when Andy was gracious enough to meet with me monthly, and as I started reading a book that he recommended called Coactive Coaching, I realized that divide was much larger than I existed. And in fact, it wasn't just a divide, it was pretty detrimental in my work. And so I'm going to kind of share a little bit why. The reason why I would even use a word as big as detrimental is because when I was giving advice or saw myself as a consultant and I was labeling it as coaching, oftentimes I would generate the solutions for the problems that people brought me, and it put a lot of weight on me. So as I was expected to have a coaching relationship with more and more people, as I spent more time in the organization, it was a heavy burden to carry. I was getting multiple questions every day, a lot of problems that I was trying to solve. I was doing research that I felt like other people were capable of doing. And it's not like I was just doing it being like, this is my way of doing servant leadership. I was complaining. I'm like, why do people keep asking me things that they can look up themselves? And I didn't realize that in my relationships and the way that I thought I was doing coaching, I was feeding into that culture. And I'm feeding into those expectations of me carrying the weight and the workload. And so the three principles that I just kind of want to pull out, if you resonate with anything that I said, or you say, amen, yes, I've seen that in my life, whether it's in your workplace, if you're a part of a community organization, a board, a faith-based organization, or even in your own household. I know many people, they carry the load maybe in their relationships where if anything needs to be scheduled or calendared, you're the person that they need to go to, So if you're carrying that load, I think these principles can also apply to those concepts. So the first one is just be the first. I feel like there's this, joy that comes from being the first. The first man on the moon, the first person to insert whatever amazing thing that someone did. And so if you have a culture that doesn't really represent this coaching environment of suspending judgment, of coming from a place of humility and curiosity, valuing inquiry. And when I say inquiry, I'm not talking about clarifying questions, but I mean really trying to understand someone else's perspective. You have the opportunity to be the first to bring that to your organization. So I saw that within my own organization, that this coaching culture did not exist overall. And so I was like, well, if it doesn't exist, this is an opportunity for me to bring it. The second is be patient. So I come from a Christian background, and in some of the versions of the Bible, patience is known as long suffering, which is the one I resonate with. And so understand that when you're trying to incorporate this culture of coaching, that it is going to feel like long suffering, and in every sense of suffering. And what's suffering for you might not be suffering for me, but it's worth it. And you have to remind yourself, what is the purpose? What is the goal? And if you can always connect with that vision, then it'll help you be able to suffer well. And then the last piece is be brave. Just by nature of you sitting in this conversation and in this space with me, you are already showing that you're brave and that you're courageous. It doesn't mean that you have to be skilled before you practice doing it. And how hard is it to dabble in something when you don't feel like an expert or when you think you're going to mess it up? But as many of you have learned, that some of the best things come from failure. Right? And so to know that you will fail in this process, you will mess it up, to still do it anyway because you think it's valuable, that is an act of bravery and courage. Awesome. I got somebody in my amen corner private messaging me, and I love it. Yes. So I'll close just my little spiel by sharing a story of someone that I worked with on how I saw coaching really work well, and why that story keeps me motivated to keep trying, even though it's, long suffering, even though no one else is doing it in this way. And even though I think I'm going to fail, many, many times in the process. So in my job, we have one-on-ones, and in those one-on-ones, typically people are like, these are things I'm trying to figure out, or these are all the things that I'm doing in my context. And then I give advice on the best way to do it based on my experience, right? And so I realized that this was not coaching. And so I changed all my 1 hour one-on-ones and chopped them in half, made them 30 minutes. Because I said, with 30 minutes, you can't just sit and talk around things. You just got to be really direct. And mind you, I also understood the context and the culture of the people I was talking to. In Spanish, indirect communication is the method. So I was like, all right, in order to get from indirect to direct, then we're going to cut the time. So there's not time to kind of talk around some of the things we're trying to process. And then I gave the task, and I said, hey, come think through a challenge, that you might be facing. And I said to myself, I am only going to ask questions in this meeting. So I had a coordinator come in, and she was really struggling because we have an emotional well-being program that they had in their agency in Honduras. They had, incorporated emotional well-being activities at the beginning of each tutoring session. And she came in and she's like, the challenge that I'm facing is that, we need to get rid of these emotional well-being activities, because now my staff doesn't want to do education. They don't want to tutor. They just want to sit and do calming activities all day. And so all of a sudden, all these thoughts came to my head where I'm like, what are you talking about? I started getting into problem solution mode. And I was like, no, I said I was only going to ask questions. So I had to take all of those thoughts captive, to use a Bible verse that I know. I had to take those thoughts captive, and I literally what I do is I visualize a jail when those thoughts come, and I just start swatting thoughts into it and lock them away. And so instead of trying to focusing on the issue, I focused on the person, and I noticed that she was frustrated. And so I kind of said, you sound very frustrated, and I understand, because you truly value education. And so you feel as though your staff is not aligning to that value. Is that a correct understanding of what you're going through right now? And she's like, yes. And so then I said, so why did you incorporate emotional well-being activities in the first place? And so she began to talk me through how she believes that students need to be ready, right? And they are going through so much in their homes. And emotional well-being activities allows them to be ready for learning. And I said, is the goal that you have, are you seeing that? Are you seeing results? And she began to talk about all the results. So I was like, well, it sounds like you find value in this. So where is the problem? Is the problem the activity or is it something else? And so she began to say like, well, it seems like my whole staff, they feel more comfortable with the emotional well-being activities and not the education activities. And then so I asked questions. I was like, is it the whole staff? And we learned that it was really just 2 people on the staff. And on her own, just by asking questions, some that were strong, some that probably weren't, she got to this solution, which was better than what I would have come up with. And it was even better because she had ownership of that solution. And her solution was, she realized that when a student didn't have homework, but they still came to a session, that some staff felt ill-equipped to respond to the needs of the students. And so she determined that she needed to work with the team to create something for every grade level, backup activities that they could do so they can be comfortable. And so I just asked her like how she wanted me to hold her accountable to that goal. And we did that in less than 30 minutes. It was crazy. So that's just a little bit about my story. So I'm gonna pause. I see that, Andy, we have 7 minutes left. So maybe in these last 7 minutes, we'll open it for you to either share maybe a key takeaway that you got from this whole entire session, or a question that you might have that we can go back and forth and try and resolve some of the questions that you might have. And maybe not, maybe we won't resolve all of them, but we'll try and see if we can help.
This is us valuing the silence.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I know that we're talking about us implementing coaching in our spaces. And I think that also includes the idea of addressing when we would like to be coached. So I'd love to hear like advice on like how we introduce the idea of being coached to those that like supervise us or that would be coaches.
Do you want us to coach you through this, or do you want us to just give you advice?
I guess whichever.
A real question, right? I mean, it is that's one of the most powerful questions you can ask somebody.
No, that is.
If you wanted to be coached by your supervisor, how could you go about initiating that kind of a relationship?
My initial thought is first just like introducing the concept of coaching, because I know that it's not something that everyone has a ton of experience or have not yet learned. Because I think there's value in us just communicating what we need. Beyond that, I think it's challenging because there's a vulnerability in coming in and saying that I would like to be coached, but also if I have more, it sounds awful, but if I have more experience in coaching, how does that look? Like me teaching someone how to coach when I myself am wanting to be coached, if that makes sense. If that's a challenging space to be in.
Yeah, for sure. There's those challenges are going to be there, and you're right. Like, there's definitely an aspect of vulnerability here. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that, but we don't have time to get through everything. So, Ariel and I are happy to talk further with you about that for sure. And if we did that, like, I would probably treat it like a coaching session and try to coach you through initiating that kind of a relationship. So, yeah. You know, one thing I was thinking about just from some comments and things I heard is coaching is hard. It's a skill. You can get better at it with training and mindful practice. You have to want to do it, right? So there needs to be an intention here. Noticing even when there's opportunities for coaching can be difficult. But when you notice them, you should be mindful of them and really try to lean into those moments and practice, you know, being coach-like, practice being curious, practice mirroring back. And even if you have a very task-heavy job, you can still find moments like that where you have an opportunity to connect. There are always like boundaries in our roles at home, at work, everywhere, right? So when I go to Mary's office and I need help with something, like she's in a mindset of, I'm going to provide the help. I have the knowledge and experience and I'm going to give it. And usually I'm pretty direct and like, hey, what should I do here? But there are times when I don't know like how to navigate something and I need that help. So there are boundaries to like being coach-like, right? And sometimes the boundaries of your role, you have to meet the expectations of your roles, right? But even in certain roles, there are little opportunities here and there, sometimes more than others, depending on your role, where you can engage in practicing these kinds of skills. So any final thoughts from anyone? Or
yeah, I just threw in the chat that if you have any questions, we can hang around just for, I can hang around. Andy, I don't know if you have something else, but we can hang around for a little bit. You can throw them in the chat. And then Andy and I, when we talk, we can just send a response to the people who show up on the roster for this call.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Ariel and I love talking about coaching. We love talking to people about developing these skills. And obviously, we both love connecting with our alumni, and we're so happy that you were here.
On that note, thanks, guys.